Tommy settled in Monaghan, where he now lives with his wife Patricia, who is here today as well. A founding member of the Independent Workers' Union, he was for many years a member of its national executive and attended the union as its northern organiser before retiring in 2022. Tommy is a published author and currently writes a regular column for the Communist Party of Ireland's monthly publication Socialist Voice. Without further ado, Tommy Mckearney.
Ardús is reachtain achtar ar mór an order on August Sayanu our son Blake and the cover na hair James Larkin. Mar sin, goilom a fair buicas a horch done Cuimhneamh agus na dina a hur an pluck Cuimhneamh intach shot a vayam Gramila agaf galir. We have among us a man of genius, of splendid vitality, great in his conceptions, magnificent in his courage. Words of James Connolly when speaking of big Jim Larkin. Not for one moment was he exaggerating. Jim Larkin was and remains among the greatest figures to have walked the streets and roadways of this country. He found on his arrival back from England an Irish working class in a position of abject servitude and despair. Powerless, impoverished, treated with contempt by their wealthy employers, and perhaps worst of all, leaderless and disorganised. Yet within a decade he had inspired Irish workers to organise and rise up with a confidence that they had previously never known. Whatever opinion we may hold of the state of organised labour in this country today, both north and south, it is entirely the case that thanks to Jim Larkin, that we have the insight and knowledge and understanding of what can be done and what has to be done to effect meaningful change, to transform society for the better, and indeed to secure independence and sovereignty through the establishment of a workers' republic. His achievements were remarkable, first in Belfast and then in Dublin and thereafter across Ireland. His powerful character, coupled with his inspirational oratory, challenged the wealthy Belfast business class in 1907. Breaking decades, if not centuries, of the deliberately created policy of using religion to manufacture division in order to divide the working class, he led a general strike that overcame, if only for a time, the cruel strategy of sectarianism. So powerful indeed was his message and organisation that for the first and only time in history, the local Royal Irish Constabulary refused to accept orders and break the strike. Tragically though, Britain and its Northern Irish capitalist allies were able to deploy the old technique of playing the orange card and, assisted by the British Army, smashed both the strike and working class unity. Nevertheless, Larkin has left us with an invaluable lesson that there is hope, coupled with an insight into how to move forward. At the time, and fearful of upsetting their servile relationship with British capital, compromised trade union leadership in England transferred Big Jim to Dublin, believing that he could do little with the largely unskilled and unorganised workforce in the capital city. How wrong they were. 1 year later he founded the Irish Transport and General Workers' Union, the ITNGW, arguing that Irish workers needed Irish unions. In essence, this was a union of a different type to that had existed before then in Ireland. No longer concentrating on just one craft or section of workers, the new trade union was for every worker. It was a general trade union. No longer reluctant or unwilling to enrol the unskilled labouring people as well just as skilled craftsmen and women. The ITNGW grew in strength. Thanks to the powerful oratory, charisma and the organisational determination and efforts of Larkin, before long the ITNGW had a membership in excess of 20,000 across a wide section of industry and commerce in Dublin. With a clear understanding that his commitment was to the working class as a class and not to a single section of the class, he set about building an environment in which workers could build their own society. Understanding the need to communicate this message, he launched and edited a newspaper, The Irish Worker. Unlike the large selling Irish Independent owned by capitalist Cuimhneamh Martin Murphy, Larkin's paper supported Irish organisations promoted the concept of sympathetic action, industrial unionism, and at the time advocating the creation of a separate workers' culture. In the Irish Transport and General Workers Union headquarters at Liberty Hall, the union organised music, dances and drama classes, and by 1913 carnivals and sports were provided for union members. Reaching and seeing beyond the mere negotiating for wages and labour hours, Larkin was beginning to create a self-contained, sustainable community of the working class. A working class with an identity and commitment to mutual support for every worker on the basis of an injury to one being an injury to all. Thus arose the strategy of the sympathetic strike and a refusal to pass a workers' picket regardless of who the employer was or whether one was employed on that premises or not. So fearful that its dominant position would be challenged by organised labour and displaced by a vibrant working class, the wealthy Dublin business community, acting on behalf of capitalism in general and throughout Ireland in particular, took action to break Larkin's union. Issuing an order that no union member would be allowed to work for them, the united bloc of 400 employers began what became known as the Great Lockout of 1913 to 14. Thereafter followed a bitter struggle during which an official of the Irish Transport and General Workers Union, James Byrne, became the first person to die on hunger strike in Ireland in the 20th century. Although eventually forced to abandon the strike, there emerged many significant developments as a result. On one hand, the Great Lockout indicated the power of unified action, and therefore left a legacy that remains potent to this very day. Moreover, it also taught a lesson that Irish workers would never gain their entitlements while governed by the alien regimes. Equally important, of course, was the emergence of the Irish Citizen Army under the leadership of Jim Larkin, James Connolly, and the County Antrim Presbyterian Jackie White. The Irish Citizen Army, as we know, played a significant part in the Easter Rising, and keeping with its founding commitment, which in its own words, pledged to work for, organise for, drill for and fight for an independent Ireland. An army, again in its own words, that placed its reliance on the only class that never betrayed Ireland, the Irish working class. Without doubt, a phenomenal list of achievements that would have forever graced the memory of many, never mind that of one man. To Jim Larkin we owe a debt that includes a recognition of the imperative of establishing an All-Ireland Republic built on the interests of working people. The establishment of a workers' republic that will allow us to definitively overcome the poison of imperialist and planted sectarianism. And finally, the means of doing so through the building of a militant, disciplined and politically informed and aware mass working class movement. Before concluding, may I be permitted to offer a personal view and opinion on the origins of the spirit and worldview of the great James Larkin, and in particular why it is so appropriate and indeed important this monument is placed here on this sacred spot. Big Jim was the son of natives of this area, on this very piece of land, this very farm. An area once defined by the English as the fuse, over which the Crown unit and its writ could not run unopposed. An area populated by people who never voluntarily submitted to the oppressor. Resistance came and always has come as second nature. We are all familiar, no doubt, with the great local ballad which contains the words, "And charged with combination, we were sentenced to transportation far from the hills of Mullaban." Yes, indeed, the charge of combination. The Combination Act made it a crime for two or more workmen to act in concert, or combination, in order to demand from an employer any improvement in wages or terms and conditions of employment. In effect, the name combination was what today we would call a trade union. So it is reasonable to assume that Jim Larkin's understanding of the needs of working people, and more importantly, how to address these needs, did stem not only from his impoverished upbringing in the Toxteth area of Liverpool, but also drew inspiration from the generations that preceded him here in Lower Cuimhneamh, in particular from South Armagh in general. Therefore, might I say a word of appreciation to the members of Cuimhneamh who have erected this important and very necessary monument to Jim Larkin, and to the indomitable spirit of the folk from which he came. You have performed a great and wonderful service to the cause of labour and to the cause of Ireland, because in the words of Larkin's comrade James Connolly, the cause of labour is the cause of Ireland, and the cause of Ireland is the cause of labour. The Harjans, comrades, it's for me to my hand. Now, I have the enormous honour and privilege of unveiling this important, vital monument to the great James Larkin.
Thank you very much, Tommy. We'd also